კიდევ ერთხელ მოგესალმებით, ვინც ცოტა ხნის წინ შემოგვიერთდით. ჩვენი მხრიდან პრინციპში ყველანი ვართ, ვინც დღეს ვაპირებთ, რომ თქვენთან პრეზენტაცია გავაკეთოთ და შეგვიძლია რომ დავიწყოთ. ძირითადი პრეზენტაციის ნაწილი დღეს იქნება ინგლისურად, თუმცა რაღაც პატარა რა თქმა უნდა ქართული ჩართვებიც იქნება და შესაძლებელია თუნდაც კითხვა ან რაიმე ტიპის კონცერნი ქართულადაც ასე ვთქვათ გაჟღერდა ეს არ მოგწეროთ. So hello colleagues once again, we can start right now. I want to switch to Georgian with few minutes to say just some hello and welcome speech to my colleagues and friends, okay? And later we again can switch back to English standardly. So let me do some presentations here. Just a second. Okay, გავაგზავნოთ პრინციპში ქართულად. ვინც არ მიცნობთ ორი სიტყვით გაგეცნობით, მე ვარ ხატია ძაძვა, კომპანია HashiCorp Solutions ციფრული ტრანსფორმაციების დეპარტამენტს ხელმძღვანელობ. ეს დეპარტამენტი მეტწილად კონცენტრირდება DevOps-ის, DevSecOps-ის და Agile მიმართულებების განვითარებაზე საქართველოს ბაზარზე. და დღეს პრინციპში მთავარი თემა რაც იქნება ღირებულება, რასაც ასე ვთქვათ HashiCorp-ის World Economy Disaster Recovery-ის მიმართულებით ძალიან ისეთ აქტიურ ლინკში არის დღევანდელ DevSecOps-ურ ასე ვთქვათ მიდგომებთან. იქინა გამომდინარე, რომ დღეს ბაზარზე ძალიან აქტიურად ვხედავთ, რომ ამ მიმართულებით უფრო და უფრო მეტი ადამიანი არის დაინტერესებული, გადავწყვიტეთ, რომ ჩვენ პარტნიორებთან ერთად ცოტა ცოდნის ასე ვთქვათ ამაღლებაზე გვემუშავა და გაგვეზიარებინა თქვენთვის რაღაცა საინტერესო ასე ვთქვათ დეტალები. ვისაც არ ქონია HashiCorp Solutions-თან შეხება, ორი სიტყვით დავაკომენტარებ, რომ ეს არის კომპანია, რომელიც 2008 წლიდან ძალიან აქტიურად მუშაობს საქართველოს ბაზარზე და IT-ის სხვადასხვა ასე ვთქვათ სერვისებით ვეხმარებით ჩვენს პარტნიორ კომპანიებს, რომ ცოტათი ასე ვთქვათ უფრო მეტად წავიდეთ ერთიანად წინ. ფაქტობრივად შეგვიძლია ვთქვათ, რომ საქართველოს ბაზარზე ვინც გიხსმენიათ, ეს იქნება დიდი სახის enterprise კომპანია თუ საშუალო ზომის კომპანია, პატარა კომპანიები, სახელმწიფო სტრუქტურები თუ ასე შემდგომ, ფაქტობრივად ყველა მათგანთან მუშაობთ და ჩვენი გადმოსახედით ვფიქრობთ, რომ ეს საკმაოდ საინტერესო სხვადასხვა ტიპის პროექტებს ვაკეთებთ. აქ არის მცირე წილი, თუმცა მნიშვნელოვანი ჩვენი კლიენტებისა. ასევე დავაკომენტარებ იმას, რომ ჩვენ ვცდილობთ, რომ საქართველოს ბაზარზე იყვნენ და გვყავდეს ისეთი პარტნიორები, რომლებიც გლობალურად ვიტყოდი, რომ რაღაც მთავარი მოთამაშეები არიან და ტექნოლოგიურ ფონდს ქმნიან ამ მიმართულებით, როგორიც არის პირობითად Google, როგორიც არის პირობითად Amazon, HashiCorp, ასე ვთქვათ, Datadog, Tricentis თუ ასე შემდგომ და ასე შემდგომ. დარწმუნებული ვარ, რომ ყველა თქვენგანაც ჩამოთვლილთან ყველა თუ არა ნაწილი მაინც აუცილებლად გეცნობათ, იმიტომ რომ ვინც ასე ვთქვათ ტექნოლოგიებში ვართ, ფაქტობრივად ვიცით, რომ ესენი არიან ის კომპანიები, რომლებიც მთავარი მოთამაშეები არიან დღეს ბაზარზე და ჩვენ კიდევ ვცდილობთ, რომ ამ ასე ვთქვათ გლობალური ცოდნა საქართველოს ბაზარზე გადმოვიტანოთ და მაქსიმალურად ვეცადოთ, რომ მუდმივად უფრო წინ წავიდეთ ამ მიმართულებით. დღეს როგორც უკვე ვახსენე, პრინციპში კიდევ ერთხელ დავაკომენტარებ, რომ HashiCorp იქნება ის ჩვენი პარტნიორი, რომელიც დაგვეხმარება იმაში, რომ ამ მიმართულებით ერთ-ერთ ყველაზე ასე ვთქვათ აქტიურ თემატიკას შევეხოთ, დავფაროთ და პატარა ისეთი hands-on experience-ი გაგიზიაროთ. HT Solutions-ზე კიდევ რამოდენიმე სიტყვი დავაკომენტარებ, რომ არის 4 ძირითადი მიმართულება, რომელსაც ვავითარებ ძალიან აქტიურად. მოდი დავიწყოთ ჩემგან ასე ვთქვათ მარტვიდან, ყველაზე ბოლოდან Big Data, რომელიც მეტნაკლებად უფრო ახალია ჩვენთვის და ვცდილობთ, რომ ვიყოთ მოწინავე კომპანია, რომელიც ამ მიმართულებას ძალიან ასე ვთქვათ აქტიურად ავითარებს და უფრო ასე ვთქვათ წინ და წინ მიყავს ამ მიმართულებით ქვეყანა. მეორე ასე ვთქვათ არის cyber security, მესამე არის სტანდარტული ასე ვთქვათ IT ინფრასტრუქტურა და networking-ი და მეოთხე რის ირგვლივაც დღეს ასე ვთქვათ ტრიალებთ, ეს არის ციფრული ტრანსფორმაციების დეპარტამენტი, რომლის ირგვლივაც კიდევ ერთხელ გამეორდები, უფრო ავითარებ DevOps-ის, DevSecOps-ის და Agile ასე ვთქვათ მიმართულებას. DevSecOps-ის ჭრილში დღეს დღეს უფრო და უფრო აქტიურად ხდება ასე ვთქვათ HashiCorp-ის Vault-ის გამოყენება, რომელიც არსებობს კომპანიების როგორც უფასო ვარიანტი, ასევე enterprise ვერსია და დღეს დემოს სახით ჩვენი ასე ვთქვათ კოლეგა და ძალიან მაგარი ინჟინერი და ადამიანი არმინი გაგვიზიარებს როგორ შეიძლება რომ ეს ჩვენ ასე ვთქვათ CI/CD pipeline-ში ჩვენ სტრატეგიაში ტექნოლოგიური კუთხით გამოვიყენოთ. ეს არის რაც ისეთ შესავალის კუთხით მინდა რომ ძალიან მოკლედ ამეკომენტარებინა. დავამატებ რომ თხოვნა მექნება კიდევ ერთხელ რომ თუ რაიმე ტიპის კითხვა გექნებათ და ასე შემდგომ თქვენ დიდი ალბათობით ხედავთ კითხვა-პასუხის ასე ვთქვათ სესიას ჩატში, სადაც შეგიძლიათ რომ დაგვიტოვოთ კითხვები. ვეცდებით რომ დროიდან გამომდინარე და კითხვების რაოდენობიდან გამომდინარე მაქსიმალურად დავფაროთ რაც ასე ვთქვათ მოსწრებადია. თუ რა რჩება რაღაცები, რასაც დღეს ამ 1 საათის განმავლობაში ასე ვთქვათ ვერ დავფარავთ, აუცილებლად დავტოვებთ საკონტაქტო, სადაც შეგვიძლია რომ ნებისმიერ კითხვაზე ასე ვთქვათ პასუხი გაგიზიაროთ, ჯელობა გამოგრძელოთ და ასე შემდგომ და ასე შემდგომ. ეს არის მე დროს აღარ წავიღებ, რადგან დღეს უფრო თემატიკა გვაგათვლილი უფრო ტექნიკურ დემოზე. So Armin, I just let's say finalized my hello speech. So if you're ready, I believe we can move to your part, and I can say that stage is yours. So let me stop sharing of my PPT, and if you're ready, we can continue. Okay.
Can you all hear me?
I can see it.
Okay, great. Yeah, from my side, yeah, hi, I'm Armin from HashiCorp. Today we're going to talk about Vault, how Vault works, like a little bit about the disaster recovery. This is not a complete beginner webinar for Vault. And yeah, let's talk a little bit. Yeah, I'm Armin, working here as a solutions engineer at HashiCorp, and my job is basically helping customers to implement our solution to have like a robust implementation of the solutions. And today, what is the plan of this workshop, of this webinar? I'm not going to show you hundreds of slides. It's going to be most of the time hands-on, but I'm going to give like a quick introduction to the disaster recovery capabilities of Vault, how it works, a little bit on the technical side, explanations. Then we're going to go to our lab environment where you can test like hands-on, and in the end, we're going to have like a Q&A session. If there are like any questions during the time, there is a Q&A button that you can use and ask the questions there. I have a colleague from HashiCorp who is then also going to answer them during the webinar. Okay, let's start. I mean, why is disaster recovery important? Why is like something important that organizations need to implement? And basically, in case of an outage, you want your organization, your business still to continue to operate. And how can this be achieved with Vault? Most of you are probably using Vault in the community edition. So the community edition already offers you high availability, right? You can have 3 or 5 nodes. These 5 nodes offer you high availability. If one of the nodes is down, your cluster is still going to operate. But what happens if multiple of these nodes are down or your data center loses connectivity? Then you can't access Vault, and you're going to have like some problems. Like your applications can't access these secrets. In the enterprise version, we have our disaster recovery replication, which basically means you get a standby cluster that's not being used, where just the active cluster is replicating the data to the secondary one. In case of emergency, you lose multiple nodes in the primary cluster, you can promote the secondary one, and you can work uninterrupted. And what is exactly being replicated between these 2 clusters? First of all, the secrets, obviously, the policies, but also the configurations of your secret engines and the configuration of your engines and the audit logs. So both of them are being kept in sync, and you don't have to change anything when you do like the failover. And what are like the results of that? I mean, obviously, you have increased agility. You can keep operating in a case of a disaster. You're reducing the risk. You have the same configurations, the same policies as you have in your primary cluster. You have it in your same secondary cluster, and obviously we have a reduced cost. It means in case of a catastrophic failure, you can still keep operating without having any downtime. So that's all from the slides. Now we can go directly to the hands-on workshop. I'm gonna share a link with you where you can access it. Can we send it out? Yep. I've sent you the link in the chat. If you can access it, then just write something in the chat that it worked. Exactly. If you access the link, you're gonna see this UI. This is basically hosted on Instruct, which is our lab environment. And then you can go click here and start the environment. And now our cluster is gonna start. What exactly are we gonna see here? What are we gonna work on? We have an application that's called HashiCorp that's built, but it's like integrated with Vault. And this application gets secrets out of Vault. And we can see here like an architecture diagram. It consists of 3 microservices, one for the payments, one for the production and the public API. And the production API and the payments service access databases. And both of these services get their secrets from Vault. I'll just wait a little bit till it starts, and then we can jump right into it. Is everyone able to access the Instruct tracks?
I'm not sure.
Yes. Okay, I've seen it like in the backend. Yeah, there are like already people accessing it. So I'm assuming everybody could access it without any problem. So yeah.
Okay, great.
So now our environment is ready. Let's see what we're gonna work with. So this is basically like a quick explanation about Instruct. Here we can see different tabs. We have like our application that is running. We have our Vault cluster, the UI, and we also have the terminal. And on the right side, we have our instructions we're gonna execute. In this first step, we are just gonna verify that the application is running and that we have access to the Vault token, to the Vault cluster. Here we can see our applications. If you click on buy, everything works. You get like feedback that it's that could be processed. So our application can access Vault. Let's go in the first step and get the Vault token so we can authenticate in the UI. And here we can see we have already one secret engine enabled. It's a database secret engine. We have our access methods defined and different policies. Here we have the Vault agent policy to access the database credentials. And now we can also go here and then try out if we can read one of the database credentials. You can see everything works fine. We can connect to a database, to our Vault cluster. we get our credentials that are going to be valid for half an hour. If we do it through the UI, it should also work. So everything is configured properly and we can access it. Now let's check out the status here in the top right corner. And as you can see, the replication is not enabled yet. That's something that we're going to do in the next steps. Gonna maybe take 2 minutes for everybody to load, so we are like on the same page, and then we're gonna continue with the next challenge. Yeah, I can see people are already progressing, so let's continue with the next challenge. Here we can see basically the same setup as before, but now we can see our application is not able to connect to Vault. Let's try to figure out what the problem is there. Why can't we connect to Vault? Here we can see if we go to the tab where we had previously the UI of Vault, there's some connection problem. It's not running properly. So let's investigate a little bit. Let's check our logs. And we can see we can connect to the database. Now going to the Vault agent. So you take a look at the configuration of the Vault agent, what it actually does here. Right, so the Vault agent is basically our utility to help with authentication and rendering of the secrets. You can see we are using an app role to authenticate. Using this URL to get this Vault URL. And then we have some templates that we're rendering. Let's take a look at the template. And here we can see we're accessing the database credentials and rendering it to a JSON file. We get the username, the password of the database, and then render to a file. And this file is being consumed by our application. So something is happening, something is going wrong here. And let's see what the problem is. Let's start the Vault agent. And we can see it starts with authentication process, but it's not able to finish it. Let's stop the agent, see what kind of errors are we gonna get. No, didn't stop it. Exactly. Now we can see we have some authentication handler error. Looking into the Vault logs, we can see that we were not able to unseal Vault properly. In this case, we're using GCP KMS to do the unsealing of Vault. And there's some mistake. We can't find the key. Probably somebody deleted it or it was like rotated without doing like the proper procedure. So we can't unseal Vault. In this case, basically, our data is now encrypted and we can't access it anymore. And to avoid this, we're going to set up disaster recovery. So if we end up in this case, we have like a backup way to actually get to our data and still continue operating. Also gonna now take like 5 minutes so you have time to do work on it on your own speed, and then we're gonna do the next challenge. Okay, I can see most of the people are done with this challenge. Let's go with the next one. So what do we have seen right now? Basically, if one cluster is down, our application can't access the secrets, and thus our application is down. This demo, it's obviously just some demo application, but in the real world, you're going to have like your applications that are earning the money, and you need them to keep running even if your vault instance is down. So now we're going to take a step back and change like the setup. Instead of having just one region, we're going to have two different regions. You can imagine it's two different data centers, two different cloud providers, two different availability zones in one cloud provider. These are the common scenarios that we see. And then we're going to basically configure our replication, get the batch DR token to restore it later to do the promotion. And yeah. So with Vault, we have like two different kinds of replications. One is for performance replication. These are the common use cases. If you're operating on a global scale, a latency is a problem, then you would have multiple active clusters. But this is not the focus of today. Today's the focus on the DR replication. You're going to have one cluster that's replicating to a passive cluster. And as I told already, everything is being replicated, right? The policies, the configuration, the alpha methods, and all the configuration, and also your tokens. So your applications don't need to re-authenticate. If you promote a different cluster, they're basically the same. From the point of view for the application, they are doing the same service and are the same cluster. Yeah, like some other resources if you want to learn more about the topic. So let's start. Here we have again our application. Now it's running. It's connected to one of the clusters here. If you go to the tabs, we see we have one cluster in the west and one cluster in the east, and our Vault terminal. Now let's get our root token. and access the first cluster. As you can see, we have here our database engine, the same as we had in the previous use case, or in the previous scenario. Now we're going to go and get the root token from a second cluster, authenticate. And as you can see, we have here just our cubbyhole, the default secret engine that is enabled. And these two clusters at the moment don't know of each other. They're acting completely separate. They're not sharing any data. And yeah, we can see it if we go, for example, create here a new secret engine, enable the key value one. Just name it key value, add some secrets in here. Let's call it HashiCorps. The key is, let's call it here secrets, and let's call this one my secrets. Save this. Taking a look at the secret engines, we see the key value one enabled. And again, in the other cluster, there is nothing. So how do we set up the disaster recovery? Basically, we go to the primary cluster, or the one that we want to be the primary cluster. Click on enable. Now you can set up two different types of replication, like the performance one, like I said, is more about scaling your cluster if you have latency issues, but we're going to focus on the disaster recovery one. Select it as a primary, and then enable the replication. So, and now we need to connect this one with the secondary. We're going to click add secondary, give it a ID. Let's call it Vault East Disaster Recovery. Click on generate token. Now we have our activation token. We have to go to the secondary cluster, enable it here, select as a cluster mode secondary, and then paste the activation token. And now our cluster is enabled. So now if we go to the primary one, we see the primary one is aware of the disaster recovery cluster, of the secondary cluster. And there is something changed here. If you see, we don't have access anymore to the secrets, to the authentication methods and policies, because this one is not handling any requests at the moment. This one is really there just as a backup where we replicate the data back. So now we have, we need to generate like an operator token. This operator token is going to be used later on for our promotion of the cluster. You can do this like at the configuration time, or you can also do it later if you want with the unsealed keys, you can generate these tokens. So you don't need to have them like, you don't need to like pre-make them. You can also just generate them in the moment when you need them. But for this case, we're just going to pre-generate them so we can use them later on. Exactly. Gonna give you like, again, maybe 5 minutes, 5-10 minutes, so you can walk through this on your own speed. And then we can go to the next challenge. Okay, let's continue. I saw in the Q&A, people asked if this is going to be available afterwards. Yeah, the webinar is going to be recorded, and also you can use this link for this webinar, for this lab environment in your own time. So you can also do it like later on in your in your own speed. So now let's continue and get back to the same scenario that we had like before. We have some problem. We can't access the primary cluster. Our application is not running. How can we do this? How can we now solve this problem? Let's log into the UI. You see we have the UI here ready. And how can we actually like promote it? Now we go to the secondary cluster. We can now click just on the promote cluster. And if you remember the operator token that we created before, we can now just paste it here, promote the cluster. Gonna take a few seconds for it to be operational. And now we can go take the root token, log in again. And now we can see the secondary cluster is now functioning. We have our secret engine. You can see everything is replicated, same access methods and the policies. And now it's basically operational again. So now we can go and restore the service, run the Vault agent again. And as you can see, everything is working properly. We were able to render our configuration. And in the real world, you would have a load balancer before these two clusters, right? So you don't have to manually update addresses. You don't have to manually, if something goes wrong, you don't have to manually change the address from region west to region east. You would have a load balancer that's like automatically handling the traffic and the routing. And Vault makes it like easy. We have like a system help endpoint, which generates like different HTTP status codes depending on the state of Vault. If it's operational, if it's like a secondary cluster that's sealed, if it's a secondary cluster that's running standby, different status codes indicate different states, and you can use them in your load balancer to automatically route then traffic. And yeah, that's basically the restoration or the promotion of the secondary cluster to a primary cluster. Now we have the situation. Let's continue and wrap this up. Now the situation is we have two different clusters. The first, the US East cluster, the West cluster. Basically, now it's operational again. The operation teams took care of it, restarted it again. But now this cluster thinks it's also a primary cluster. And this one also thinks it's a primary cluster. So now we're going to get like it could be like a problem. You can get into a so-called split brain situation. So we need to demote one of the clusters. So we can go on the status again, then click on manage. And then we can demote the cluster. Let's confirm this. And now we have like demoted the old active cluster to a passive cluster. So we don't get into any problems. And I did the demotion with the token that I've created before, but you could also do the demotion. You can also generate this DR token on the fly. So this could be done if you go, for example, take a look at the initialization keys of Vault. We have here 3 of them. Then we can go to the Manage tab, generate an operational token. We're going to take, we need to, in our configuration, we're just saying we need 2 of the 3 key shards to be able to do any operations. So we can pass this one and then pass the second recovery key. And now we get like a command that we can use to generate our DR operational token, which is this one. Let's save it. And now we go to the east, go again to our status and add a secondary token. Let's call it region west. This one, and then go back to our other token. Oh no, sorry, and now basically we have like configured this secondary cluster, or the old secondary cluster, to be aware of the other cluster, and now we are like back into like a healthy state where this one is now being used for replication, and this one is again the active cluster that's handling all the requests. Yeah, and that's basically it. Change this. Yeah, and that's basically for now it's yeah. So now it's like the time, we have like still 10 more minutes left. If you have any questions, now's like the time to ask them, or you can go directly to Katja, write her email. Yeah. Let's see.
Many thanks, Armin. It was quite good, at least for me, very interesting one. Sure, yes, I can see a couple of questions, but I want to be sure if I need to ask it, or a representative from High Tech Solutions can help me.
Yeah.
Elena, how do you think? Am I the one who I need to read it, or you will do it? How do you prefer?
I can also, I mean, one of the first questions is like, are there any features that support like load balancing? Exactly, that's the case that I talked. Vault has a system health endpoint that you can access, and you can use this endpoint to check the state of the clusters, to check if it's a primary cluster, if it's a secondary cluster, and if it's like a primary cluster that's actually functioning. So your load balancer can automatically route the traffic according to the status codes. And the other question is, can Vault notify admins in a disaster case? But Vault doesn't have a notification system built in. Usually you would use the metrics endpoint and pipe the metrics into like Grafana or something, into monitoring system, and set up alerts there. In these monitoring systems, you can then see, okay, are we handling any requests? What is the state? What's the health state of our cluster? And this can then help, this takes over the notification.
Okay, thank you.
Last one, how long does it take to do a failover? And can we automate it? I mean, it depends on the process that you have implemented. We had a customer at HashiCorp who was presenting their workflow. They were able to do it like in under 1 minute, do the complete failover. Can you automate it? I mean, in the end, you can use APIs to automate certain processes there, but it should just be a human who's actually making the decision that one cluster is not healthy, that you need to promote it. you really don't want to automate this, because at some point there's maybe some networking issue. And if you automate this could be, yeah, you're going to be maybe like by accident do some kind of promotion, which you really don't want to do. So this shouldn't be fully automated. Notification can be automated. Certain steps could be automated, but a human should be the one who makes like the final decision to do the promotion.
Great. Anything else? I believe no. Am I right? I think that's all, Armin, in our chat about our questions. Okay, that's it for now. So quickly, I will again switch to Georgian. Madloba. დროისთვის, მადლობა დასწრებისთვის. იმედი მაქვს, რომ საინტერესო გამოვიდა და ესეთ ნაყოფიერი 1 საათი იყო. როგორც ჩემმა კოლეგამ ახსენა, თუ რაიმე დამატებითი კითხვა იქნება, ან რაიმეში დაკვალიანება დაგჭირდება და ასე შემდგომ, ნებისმიერ დროს მეილზე, ასე ვთქვათ, რომელიც იყო გამოტანილი, შეგიძლიათ რომ შემოეხმიანოთ, ან LinkedIn-ზე, ასე შემდგომ ნებისმიერ, ასე ვთქვათ, ჩატინგის საშუალებაში შეგიძლიათ რომ დამიკავშირდეთ. პრინციპში ეს არის. დიდი მადლობა. მსგავს სესიებს სხვადასხვა საკითხებზე ციფრული ტრანსფორმაციის ირგვლივ გავაგრძელებთ და პრინციპში ჩვენს Facebook გვერდზე, LinkedIn-ზე და ასე შემდგომ შეგიძლიათ რომ თვალი ადევნოთ ხოლმე. ეს არის უღრმესი მადლობა კიდევ ერთხელ. Once again, many thanks, my colleagues. For today, that's it. And I announce that we will meet again. Thank you a lot.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.